Hey, Andy, did you hear that story about that brave guy from Ohio whose hand was trapped under a rock after a climbing accident in Utah?
No. What happened, Rollo?
Well, there's this guy named Aaron Ralston who is a really confident climber. He started climbing professionally in 2006. He was also very independent, and he often went out climbing on his own. So one day in 2003, he was climbing in a canyon when a rock suddenly fell on his left hand and nearly broke it. The rock then moved and trapped his right hand.
No way. What did he do? He must have absolutely panicked.
Actually, he was relatively calm just after it happened, but he tried many creative ways to free his arm, and it was impossible.
That's terrible. So, did he die?
No, that's the amazing part. He survived for 5 days with almost no food or water, but he became convinced that he was going to die and even made a video of himself to say goodbye to his family.
So, what happened?
Well, on the 6th day, he realized that the only way to get out would be to cut his arm off, and he had to use a knife to do it, which took him about an hour. Then he managed to escape, and he was rescued.
That's incredible. I bet he never wants to go climbing again.
Actually, he has continued climbing since the accident. In fact, in 2005, Ralston succeeded in climbing all 59 mountains in Colorado.
It sounds like he's obsessed.
Yeah, but he says he's changed these days. He says that he always used to look for adventure, but now he thinks about much more than climbing, especially since he and his wife had a baby in 2010.
Thank goodness for that.
In this week's edition of MindWorks, we're discussing savant syndrome, which is when people with developmental disabilities such as autism also have incredible mental abilities in particular areas. There are many examples of savants, but to begin with, we will look at the most famous example, the character in the 1988 movie Rain Man. Kim Peek was the man who inspired Dustin Hoffman's character in the movie. Peek was a savant who struggled with some everyday tasks, but, in contrast, had other mental abilities far more developed than normal people. For example, Peek had great difficulty doing common tasks such as getting dressed, but he could read a book in only an hour. He could also accurately remember the details of 12,000 different books. When he met people in the street, by simply asking them their birthday, Peek was able to tell them what was in the newspapers on that date. So why does this happen? Well, there are different theories. One theory is that when there is brain damage in one area, there is greater connectivity in another area of the brain. Another idea comes from specialists who argue that savants do something called hypersystemizing. This means that they can process facts about the external world much better than other people can. This theory proposes that while most people think about relationships, as well as the events in the outside world, savants, on the other hand, focus far less on relationships, and this allows their minds to process external information very efficiently. For example, in Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman's character is able to predict the next cards by remembering their order exactly. Rain Man won a number of awards, including Best Actor, Best Picture, and Best Screenplay. In fact, the screenwriter, Barry Morrow, gave his award to Kim Peek as a gift. Sadly, Peek died at the age of 58 in 2009, but the movie which he inspired continued to make savant abilities famous. Peek redefined our traditional ideas of what it is to be a genius. Another famous example of a savant is the British artist Stephen Wiltshire, who can draw incredibly accurate pictures of cities, sometimes after having only observed the city for a very short time. Stephen started drawing buildings at the very young age of 7 and has now grown to be...
I love your dog, James. He's very intelligent, isn't he?
Yes, he is. We go to the park every day for a walk, and he knows when it's time to go. Dogs love to go for walks, don't they?
Absolutely.
It must be nice to have horses on your farm, Paula.
Yes, it is. They're beautiful animals, aren't they?
I agree. And your farm isn't exactly small, is it?
No, we have a very big field where they can run around.
Aw, look at your new puppy. She has such a cute face, doesn't she?
Yes, she's wonderful, and she's growing fast.
You can give her regular dog food now, can't you?
No, she still eats special food. She loves it.
Sonia, there aren't a lot of crocodiles near your house in Florida, are there?
No, because I live in the middle of town. They live in areas just outside of town, though.
I see. I guess it's not safe to go to those areas, is it?
That's right. It's dangerous, so you have to be very careful.
With us today is Sonia Flores. Sonia works at an animal shelter as a seeing eye dog trainer. She's here to talk about what she does at her job, what experience she needed to become a dog trainer, and what she does with the dogs. Thanks for joining us, Sonia.
My pleasure.
Can you describe for our listeners what a seeing eye dog does?
Of course. Basically, a seeing eye dog helps people who can't see find their way in the world.
How long have you trained seeing eye dogs at the animal shelter?
I've been working as a dog trainer for 3 years now. I started working at the shelter as a care worker, and after the shelter's seeing eye dog trainer announced that she was retiring, I decided to study as a trainer.
Can you describe your technique as a dog trainer?
Yes, of course. Well, I start training the dogs when they are puppies. I love this part of their training because they are so cute, but they are ready to learn as well. Once they are able to leave their mothers, I spend 2 or 3 months teaching them how to behave, how to sit, and how to take commands. When they get a bit older, I will start to take them out in public so they can get used to these surroundings.
That must be a very exciting experience for the puppies.
Yes, and a very challenging experience for me. I have to teach them how to behave in a public setting and also how to ignore other animals. But I don't really get into that until the puppy has become an adult dog, and that's after a few months.
I see. So it takes a while before the real training begins.
Exactly. When they are 12 to 14 months old, I begin to teach them how to recognize obstacles. You know, anything that might lead a person into danger. The most important obstacles are traffic intersections. But there are also things like low-hanging branches on trees.
Oh, wow. That's very smart. The dog could pass under it, but they understand that their owner can't.
Exactly.
If someone wanted to become a seeing eye dog trainer, what qualifications would they need?
Well, I have been to a 4-year college, but I didn't train to work with animals. I started working at the shelter as a student, actually. I think the most important thing is to have actual work experience caring for and working around animals. This is how I was accepted into a training program. To become a seeing eye dog trainer, I needed a license to train dogs, which I obtained at the shelter.
So, if you're someone who has professional experience around animals, you could apply for this job.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your work with us. I'm sure you've inspired some of our listeners to become dog trainers.
I hope so. Thanks very much for having me.
Hi, I'm Jim Hernandez, and I've been a caretaker of animals for years. Some people believe that zoos are a terrible environment for animals. They are kept in cages, they are not living in their natural habitats, And it's a strange idea that humans should be allowed to view animals this way. Imagine if it were the other way around, right? While I think there are some benefits to zoos, in general, I believe the better alternative is a wildlife park. A wildlife park is a very large area of land, sometimes thousands of square miles in area, for animals to live in safety and as naturally as possible. I work as a keeper at a wildlife park, and it's a very fulfilling job for me, especially since the wildlife park takes such good care of the animals. Still, there are people who believe that even this type of environment is bad for animals. Animals should never be forced into a closed area. They should have the right to move freely in the forests, jungles, open plains, lakes, and rivers that are their natural habitats. I understand why they might feel this way. We try to create the most natural environment at the wildlife park as we can, but it's not going to be 100% natural. The animals will eventually reach a fence that they cannot cross, and there are also visitors to the park. So the animals will encounter humans, something that probably wouldn't happen in nature, at least not very often. This brings me to the greatest benefit of a wildlife park. You see, animals in nature do come across humans in their natural habitats. Many of those experiences are not positive for the animal, and it has led to many animal deaths. It is one of the reasons why some animals, such as lions, tigers, and hippos, are endangered. Their natural environments are becoming more and more dangerous because of humans. So, it might be beneficial if humans created a safe environment for these animals. Our wildlife park is designed to provide a safe habitat for large animals such as lions and hippos. We have many other animals at the park as well, such as birds, turtles, and even a few porcupines. The money we receive from visitors goes to the park's maintenance, but some of it also goes to the preservation of animals in the wild. We help organizations that monitor animals in their natural habitat and make sure they are not being hunted illegally. So, while it's not a perfect solution to helping animals in danger, I think it's one of the best.
Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast. Now, we've heard a lot about the possible dangers of artificial intelligence recently. Even the initials AI make people think of evil robots or computers who are obsessed with taking over. And only humans can save the world. This is probably not surprising, as most Hollywood movies like I, Robot generally focus on our fears of being taken over by our own creations. But think about how false that idea is. Just one look at most of your everyday gadgets should show you that artificial intelligence is already part of everyday life, and we benefit from it all the time. Take your drive to work, for example. Using location data from a number of smartphones in the area, Google Maps analyzes the speed of traffic in your town. It can therefore tell you where there are traffic problems and recalculate your route in real time. Quite intelligent, right? And what about something a little closer to home, like your email account? AI works very hard to put spam emails in a special folder. Spam emails, by the way, are the kind of emails that try to sell you things you don't need. People who send spam emails update them frequently, so your email account actually learns to detect spam by specific words. But it also learns what spam is for you. Some people might want to get the same type of emails that you reject, so your email account's AI is able to learn who you don't want to get emails from. And have you ever wondered how on earth Facebook knows who is in a photo you've uploaded? Well, that's AI too. Facebook uses an artificial intelligence software called DeepFace to learn what people's faces look like. So, if you upload a photo of yourself with a group of friends, Facebook is able to instantly identify who is in the picture. And it can do this with 97.5% accuracy. That's nearly as accurate as a human. To put that in context, the FBI's software can only get to 85% accuracy. So, AI is everywhere already and helps us in many ways. And as the software engineer Grady Booch says, I trust an artificial intelligence the same, if not more, than a human. So, let's relax and enjoy the fact that AI is making our lives easier and more efficient, not scarier. After all, you're not scared of your own cell phone, are you?
Hey, Pablo, how's it going? Have you come up with any ideas for the end-of-term presentation for our psychology class next week? Remember that there's a prize for the best one.
Oh, hi, Grace. I've been thinking about a few things, but nothing that's really going to be that interesting. I keep looking at what we've been studying so far this year, but I'm not having any luck. I'm seriously thinking of giving up. I might take up philosophy instead. Psychology is too hard.
Maybe we can do our presentation about exactly this problem.
What do you mean?
Well, I've been having the same problem as you. I've been trying to think of a presentation about something we've seen this year, but maybe we should be looking at some completely different options.
I still don't get it.
Apparently, it's called divergent thinking. With normal problem solving, which is also called convergent thinking, you rely on logical steps to solve a problem. The solution you get to may or may not be the right one, but with divergent thinking, you look at a lot of different possible solutions.
I don't understand the difference, really.
Right. Well, think about this presentation. We've been trying to work out what to present on based on what was in our psychology course this year. That's convergent thinking. We should be thinking about other psychology topics and plan a presentation about something totally different.
Ah, I see. Our teacher will be impressed with that. Okay, how do we start with this divergent thinking then?
We can start by imagining all the different topics that we could do a presentation about. That's brainstorming. And then we can do some question writing. That's when you write a lot of questions about a topic to get as many ideas as possible.
So you don't reject any ideas, right?
Exactly, and that's called deferring judgment. You don't make any quick decisions. In fact, you accept all ideas and look at them all equally.
Okay, great. I love it. Let's start then. I've actually been looking up some other topics that we haven't studied this year. Let's look at those.
Great! We might even win the prize.
With us today is international communication expert Lars Brown. Lars is here to talk about the different ways people communicate in different cultures when it comes to nonverbal communication. You know, facial expressions, body language, hand signals, and so forth. Lars, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Carla.
Well, I'm sure you have lots to tell us about this subject. But one thing that first came to my mind is handshakes. They are such a common form of nonverbal communication. How do they differ from place to place?
Well, here in the United States, people like to use a firm, quick handshake. They squeeze each other's hands very tightly. That's also the case in Northern Europe. It seems to be a sign of confidence, but that is seen differently in other places, such as the Far East. There, they view this as aggressive. They don't prefer handshakes at all, but rather a bow.
What are handshakes like in other parts of the world?
Well, in Southern Europe, the handshake tends to be warmer and longer, and they often use both hands when shaking hands. In Turkey, it is considered rude to shake hands firmly. And in Africa, the handshake is very loose.
Interesting. What about eye contact?
Again, this is something that is very different in Western nations versus the rest of the world. In Asia and Africa, having a long period of direct eye contact is considered aggressive, so it is actually a sign of respect to avoid eye contact, or at least look away at some point. In Western cultures, though, if a person avoids eye contact, people may think that they are not honest, so eye contact in Western nations is important.
And what about touching other people while you communicate? Is this a problem in many countries?
This is where Northern Europe, the US, and the Far East have something in common. Touching is not appropriate during communication. In Latin America, Southern Europe, and the Middle East, people sometimes touch each other when they speak, and it is not considered rude.
Lastly, I'd like to talk about hand gestures. Is there anything that's considered rude in one country but acceptable in another?
It is common for people to make the thumbs up gesture. This is fine in most parts of the world, but in Greece and the Middle East, it is considered rude. Another hand gesture, where you use your index finger to call someone to you, where you curl your finger up, is very rude in many parts of Asia. In fact, in the Philippines, it's a crime and you can get arrested.
Well, that is very good to know. That's all the time we have today, but thanks very much for your informative talk.
You're welcome. I'm Leroy Thompson, linguistics researcher and book author. Today, I'd like to talk about the shift in communication that has been happening for many years now, in which there are more images because people pay less attention to words. There isn't a better place to study this phenomenon than in advertising. In the 1800s, when print media was the only form of advertising, you would see a lot more words featured in the advertisement than you do today. Naturally, there would be some illustrations, but oftentimes you would see a great deal of text describing what was being sold and all of its benefits. And people actually read all of it. It was accepted that this is how you would be informed about a product. In the early to mid-20th century, this trend continued, but a change occurred in the language that companies used in their advertisements. It became less about the product's benefits and more about what the product could do for you on a personal level. This personalization of advertising would continue for a long time. In the late 20th century, you would finally begin to see what we largely see today, an image and a few words, maybe just 2 words, that sold the product. For example, Apple computers began ads which simply had the Apple logo, with maybe a famous person like John Lennon and the words, "Think different." It was so creative and effective that it still exists today. Nowadays, we see a lot of different types of advertisements. But what's most notable are the advertisements that we see online, especially how we see them. Oftentimes, they are posted alongside the news we read, and they feature eye-catching effects. For example, they flash their messages. Or they include a video that sometimes plays on its own, so you can listen to the message while you read the news. So, it seems that the focus on imagery and less on words is a trend that's likely here to stay. But is that such a bad thing? After all, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so perhaps it's more efficient to communicate with images rather than words.
Every good cause requires a hero, someone who speaks about the idea and shows everyone why it's so important. Unless there is someone special speaking in favor of a cause, we pay less attention to it. Climate change is a good example of this. It has been in the news so much recently because of a 16-year-old Swedish girl called Greta Thunberg, who used to be too shy to speak at all. Most recently, she spoke to the European Parliament, reminding politicians that up to 200 species were becoming extinct every day because of climate change. This may sound impressive, but it all started when she was even younger. At 11 years old, Greta Thunberg was depressed and stopped going to school. She stopped speaking. Her parents decided they should provide her with the opportunity to talk. So they just waited and listened to her. When she finally started talking, she talked about climate change. She talked to her parents about the bad things that would happen to the environment if governments didn't create laws to reduce global warming. In fact, Greta managed to persuade her mother, a famous Swedish singer with an international career, to stop flying. She also persuaded her father to become a vegetarian. When she realized the power that she had to convince people, Greta decided to take action against climate change. She sat outside the Swedish parliament from 8:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. every day. And then someone joined her. And then someone else joined her. Eventually, she was asked to make a speech in front of thousands of people at a climate change event. Her parents did not want her to do this because they were worried about her. But she did it. Soon after this, she got offers from all over the world to make speeches. So, we can expect to hear a lot more from Greta, although she is not saying something that everyone wants to hear. Because when people think about global warming, they still want to feel a sense of hope. They want to feel like they do not need to be too concerned. But with climate change, the reality is very different. In fact, as Greta said to all the business leaders at the World Economic Forum, "I don't want you to feel hopeful. I want you to panic, and then I want you to act." Climate change definitely has a new hero.